Okay, in today's video, I wanted to talk once again about safety and ownership, but not about actual safety, real safety, and not about actual ownership. So let me explain. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon if you're capable of doing that. Obviously, take care of yourself and your community first. Let's get into the video. So I already talked about false safety before and how we often crave that sensation, that feeling of safety, but we don't necessarily know what true safety may appear like or be like because we've never truly experienced it. We've never truly embodied safety. And what I mean by embodying safety is actually ownership. Ownership is, in my mind, quite similar to freedom. People don't really understand what ownership is, just as they don't understand what freedom is. And just as freedom is a realized necessity, ownership is when you embody a certain experience, when you truly understand what something is, not just cognitively, but through your life experiences, through your inner experiences, etc. Some people may even call this spirituality. They may refer to certain sensual experiences. Like, for example, if you meditate, you will definitely feel one with the source, one with the substance. And that is not some kind of mysterious, some kind of a supernatural experience. It is actually our bodies interacting with our environments in a certain manner. And yes, it creates some kind of chemical reaction in our brain. But remember, chemical reactions are not all that is, because otherwise it would be mechanistic or mechanical materialism, which is not really how the dialectical materialists look at the world. And when we talk about embodying safety, that means we not only know how it feels, but we also are able to observe in our immediate environments what signs are there to prove to us that we are actually safe. And this is where you can see some correlation with cognitive behavior therapy, where you are encouraged to look for actual evidence about your sensations and senses, because they may not always be very accurate, especially if you have experienced trauma in the past. So, for example, if you feel like someone dislikes you, then you are encouraged to see for actual empirical signs, according to, I think, cognitive behavior therapy or even dialectical behavior therapy, which has nothing to do with actual dialectics, but it has the word dialectic in its title, which is kind of unfortunate. But they do suggest you look for signs outside of yourself to prove or disprove your sensation or your feeling. And oftentimes when you just write lists of these things, why this person dislikes you may actually end up being just your inner sensation, which is not proven by the outside empirical evidence. But do remember that empirical evidence on its own is not going to be evidence enough. And this is where the dialectical materialism is providing us with the tools of the logic of things, right? And not necessarily the capitalist logic of things, but dialectical materialism postulates a type of logic where you are able to see the unity and struggle of the opposites, as I always say. But when you start looking at everything as not black and white, right or wrong, good or bad, etc., when you're looking at these two in tandem and how they're both the side of the same coin and how they can be therefore resolved when you look for this inner contradiction. So if you can imagine it as a spiral, some people have suggested this in the past, that the processes of the substance of the matter can be observed in a spiral pattern, then you can see that in a spiral, where is the right, where is the wrong, where is the black, where is the white? It is all moving together somewhat cohesively, together in a certain state of flow, and then the sides of that spiral is where you are able to observe some kind of a contradiction. And whether we like it or not, the contradictions are going to resolve themselves. It is not a spontaneous process. We can study it and we can actually see. But the question arises, how do we apply this to the sensation of safety when we realize that the sense of safety is the opposite to the sense of fear? Then we realize that in order to understand safety, we've got to understand fear, because they're the two sides of the same process. And when you realize that fear is that lack of safety, lack of connection, then you can start looking for, first of all, of course, the signs of safety, the outer signs of safety. Usually when a person is safe, they're going to exhibit certain outwards behavior, they're going to look a certain way, and their environment is going to appear a certain way. And some of these signs and some of these features may be helpful at first, to understand true safety. However, if you look at many of them for a long time, and if you do get to experience true safety, you'll realize quickly that all of these outward expressions of safety, they're not actually the conditions of safety. A person can be safe even if the outside environment does not necessarily appear safe, even if a person doesn't appear safe themselves. So if a person is in some kind of dire circumstances, they may still feel safe, and they may still be safe if they know what's happening around them, if they have a sense of control, and if they have some actual agency in this scenario. They may actually be safe even if they don't appear to be. And what I'm trying to say here is that a lot of us do not know what true safety is. We've never embodied that. We've never had a true safe experience with the world. And this is where all kinds of mindfulness practices and meditation practices can be helpful, because you will be able to observe the opposite of safety. You will be able to observe your fears, because when you meditate correctly, and of course there is no right or wrong, correct or incorrect way, but when you enter that state of flow, when you are no longer associating yourself with your thoughts and your fleeting sensations, this is when you start to observe your actual self. And oftentimes it may be filled with fear, especially in the modern world, in the late stage capitalist world, virtualized capitalist world. It is pretty much impossible to feel safe, because a lot of the safety markers are superficial. They're just on the surface. If you dig a little deeper, you will see that there is no true safety under capitalism, because you are disposable. Your labor power is the only thing you can offer if you're not a capitalist. So there is no true safety. You're not guaranteed anything. No, not food, not shelter, nothing. And this creates this fear. This creates this sense of uncertainty. And this is what you can observe when you meditate. And after you practice it for a while, you will be able to notice the patterns of fear. And when you understand the patterns of fear, this is when you realize that there are also patterns of safety. When you realize what it is you don't want, then all of a sudden you have a lot more insight on what it is you actually want. So when you think, I don't want to feel this way, well, is it the opposite that I want to feel? And then you can compare and contrast, and then you kind of can figure out what true safety may feel like. So, and safety also is a lot about feeling in control. So if you're not a subject, if you're not an agent, then you're never going to truly experience safety. And remember, all of these are moments in a process. They're not clear-cut, black and white. This is safety. It is solid. It is never changing. This is how it is. No. Dialectical materialism helps us understand that everything being a process, it consists of so many of these moments and so many of these degrees and levels of something, that to truly explain every single moment will take a long, long time. This is why a lot of the dialectical materialist works, philosophical works and books, this is why they're so heavy. This is why Hegel is like so strange at first when you're not used to his vocabulary. But as you read more and more of him, as you repeat some of his postulates in your mind, you're like, this guy was onto something. You can really see how Marx was able to take his methods, Hegelian methods, and turn it around and actually get to the theory that we have today. For example, with safety, it is only when you truly perceive, truly understand the essence of your fear, then you will be able to understand safety. Because safety is all about connection and control and agency. But when you understand it from a dialectical perspective, then you know that there is no true control. You don't control anything. You are an object of circumstances oftentimes. However, that does not mean that you are a puppet and you have no will, free will whatsoever, and you will just be always floating like some piece of trash in the water, moved by the elements with no ability to change anything. That's not it. The thing is, when you understand your fear being the lack of connection and the lack of control, this is when you can start regaining your actual control. And it's very limited. I would argue that as people, we have very, very limited control over our surroundings, because our power is in numbers, our power is in the collectives, not in the individual. But it is still something that can provide you with a lot of empowerment and it can free up a lot of your energy, because fear wastes a lot of energy, okay? When you're afraid, even unconsciously so, you're going to waste so much energy just being constantly alert, just being very hyper aware of your surroundings, and it is a very time-consuming, energy-consuming thing. So when you start embodying your fear, this is when you can let in a little bit of that safety and control, realizing that, oh, heck, I actually don't have much control over my life because I have only my labor force, my labor power to offer. So maybe instead of desiring that ultimate control when everything is always under my control, maybe I can look for little smaller pieces. And it's not about, small acts of something, even though it is also, but it is, where do I exercise my free will actually? How do I free up my time? How do I free up myself from all of these influences, which again are neither bad nor good, they're just there. Do you want to necessarily follow this train of thought? Do you want to follow this ideology, etc., etc.? So when you start going through that process, when you honestly start talking to yourself about what safety will appear like to you and what it actually is, this is when you understand that, first of all, it's not going to be possible to do on your own completely, because you need other people to embody the safety with you. You will have to mirror each other's safety. You have to prove to each other, according to the logic of things and empirical evidence, this not only sensation, but this being of safety. So when you start practicing something together, be it reading books, meditating, going on walks, having little picnics in the park, arguing, organizing in any small capacity, this is when you're able to start seeing the actual signs of true safety. And when you start trusting people more, this is when you're able to realize that you will never be fully in control of other people, the same as you're not in control of your environment. But you can still exercise limited free will, you can still exercise limited agency, you can still help other people understand you and what it feels like to be you, and you can learn to cooperate with these people, and you will see that your control lies in cooperation. So control and cooperation is another, I think, dialectical connection, dialectical unity, where the more you cooperate, the more control on the surface you give up, but then the more control you're able to gain, because you can establish more safe connections with people. And again, that doesn't mean that every single cooperation type of a process is going to run smoothly according to what you want. But again, this is the flexibility of the substance, of the processes of the universe. The fact that no matter how hard you try, how much willpower you put into something, you will never be fully in control. And of course, it is still necessary to strive towards better understanding, better cooperation, better education, but you will never be fully in control. That's just how it is. And this is what a lot of people have a very hard time with, especially if they start studying Marxism and they see all of these patterns emerge and they understand some of these dialectical connections. They're like, okay, I got it. We need to regain the means of production. Sure, of course. And that's it. But that's not it. That's just a part of that journey. Another big part of the journey is how you correlate to yourself and the rest of the people and the rest of the substance, all of the moduses of substance. Because when you realize that no matter, again, as I said before, how hard you try, you will never be able to just do things the way you want them to. Things are not going to be accomplished the way you want them to. And when you learn to still move forward or still move in a certain direction which you ultimately desire, this is when you will be able to regain that sense of agency and control and the sense of safety. So true safety is only possible when you practice it collectively, when you see that it is in opposition to fear, when you see that true courage is not having fear, but true courage is doing things despite your fear. And when you let go of that control, of that desire to run things a certain way, when you learn to work with your environment and with the people around you, not against them. When you see that ultimately everything is in unity and in a struggle, but that doesn't mean that they have to destroy each other. They can actually grow and change, and then something new is going to arise out of it. Of course, there are certain points where something will have to break to give way to a new thing, just as in nature, you know, a flower blooms and then it withers to give space to something else, to a fruit or the next stage of the development of the plant. So the same goes to capitalism. We cannot wait for capitalism to just crumble and destroy itself, because upon its destruction is going to destroy a ton of species, a ton of matter, and it's not going to be possible to restore. So we will need to help and aid capitalism in any way we can destroy itself without as many sacrifices. We do have to observe the patterns, and we do have to learn to move with that flow. And yes, I know I'm using a lot of esoteric lingo. Unfortunately, a lot of esoteric folk have co-opted a lot of the lingo that actually is pretty accurate describing certain phenomena. So let me know if all of this made sense. I know it is all over the place, but that is how it be sometimes with me. I'm so exhausted and so tired. So please do consider supporting me on Patreon. If you're capable of, obviously take care of yourself and your community first. I hope you have a great day today. Subscribe to me on all the social medias, even though I don't do much there. Maybe one day. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you sometime later.